Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been rolled away. So she ran to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and she said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb. We do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out towards the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. And then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw it and believed, and they did not yet understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. And then the disciples returned to their homes. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know it was him. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? For whom are you looking?" Supposing he was the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." And she turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means my teacher. That was the reading from John 21 through 16. When I visited my father on Palm Sunday last week, he was telling me how he's been reading old Louis L'Amour novels. I imagine most of you are familiar, but they are like the classics of the Western frontier genre. And my dad admitted that what draws him to these books right now, in the midst of all this chaos in politics and society, is to escape into a story where you know that at the end, the good guy will win, the bad guy will get what he deserves, and the good guy will even probably get the girl. Deep down, I think that we all love a happy ending. Even the skeptics and scientists and jaded punks, whether it's Louis L'Amour or The Lord of the Rings or quirky rom-coms, we seek these stories in one form or another, and they give us a sense of hope that we can find meaning and redemption in the tangled stories of our lives. What happy ending could be more satisfying than a humble hero who is killed by the bad guys, only to rise from the dead? It isn't surprising that Christianity, for all its arrogant foibles and dark deeds, is the most widely embraced religion in the world. I love the happy ending of resurrection. I also can resonate with the points of contention, as some were already mentioned here, that many people have with this story. For materialists, it's absurd. For Jews and Muslims, it's heretical to invest in one human, a singular divine status, as Christ's resurrection assumes. For Buddhists and practitioners of many earth-based religions, it contradicts their practice of accepting mortality, accepting death. I am a Christian and hold as sacred all the core truths of our tradition, but I've never felt that the tidy, triumphant, almighty version of resurrection was faithful to the radical teachings of Jesus. Radical literally means of the roots. And the roots of the path of Jesus are hierarchy inverting, heart opening, and earth shaking. The naysayers of Christianity do love to point out the contradictions and plot holes in the gospel accounts of the resurrection as evidence that it's all a bunch of male bovine excrement. That's another phrase I learned from my dad. That's what he would say when he was a high school teacher with his students. But the messiness in those contradictory accounts is actually what gives me the most hope in the story. Because as I speak, the people in the highest positions of authority in this land are spinning chaos, fear, and arbitrary cruelty all around us. Ordinary people are persisting and joining forces in pockets of care, inclusion, creativity, and resistance. Mother Nature is reclaiming balance and power through spectacular destruction and glorious abundance as she births the cyclical resurrection of spring. So let's get into the contradictions a little bit. The original ending of the Gospel of Mark leaves the women who go to find Jesus' body staring at an empty tomb, then fleeing in fear and amazement. Biblical scholars all agree that the final paragraphs were actually tacked on, where Jesus actually appears. They were actually tacked on years later. In the Gospel of Matthew, when the women arrive at the tomb, the earth shakes and a dazzling angel appears and tells them that Jesus has been raised. The women aren't really sure what to make of it. Still, they leave that place with both fear and great joy. And later, even after Jesus appears to the disciples, some doubt. In the Gospel of Luke, when the women come back to the disciples talking about the angel at the tomb, the men brush them off as telling idle tales. When Jesus shows up later, it becomes clear that they had all heard him explaining what would happen, but they had forgotten it. And so when we turn to the Easter story to make meaning of all the chaotic, contradictory, present-day stories playing out around us, I find it immensely helpful that the resurrection of Christ itself is not a neat, tidy package. It is also full of chaos and contradictions. And today, I read from the Gospel of John, in which Mary arises in the dark and goes alone to the tomb. When she finds it empty, she goes back to get Peter and John, but after examining the evidence, they go home confused, maybe believing it's not really even clear what they believe. Mary stays behind with her grief. And when angels appear inside the tomb, she tells them through tears that she's looking for her beloved. When Jesus himself appears and asks her what's wrong, she thinks he's the gardener and says, "If it was you, please tell me where you have put him." No one is able to embrace the possibility that Jesus has been raised until the moment that he calls Mary by name. Then comes the gasp of recognition. The relationship, the conversational process of being, the divine dance of connection. This is where she recognizes Jesus alive before her. This intimate, unexpected, miraculous encounter between Jesus and Mary was completely unique. And it happens every day. It happens every time we glimpse the Logos that Jesus embodied. The Logos is best translated not as word, but as conversation. The conversational, relational dance that underlies all being. I could wax poetic about it, but I'd much rather invite you to experience it. I really wanted to do a sunrise service with you all today. I thought it would be great to meet in a beautiful natural area at the crack of dawn when the veil is thin. It was not practical. I understand. I totally understand that. I also am glad that I got more sleep. But I realized that what I'm going to invite you to do instead is better because it's right in the middle of our uncertain, imperfect, ordinary reality. So, I hope you don't all hate me for this, but I do want to invite us to go outside for a few minutes. Wherever we are, those of us who are here together, and also those who are tuning in online, of course, you'll be outside wherever you are. Here at the center, we are in an industrial complex, not what most anyone would call a beautiful natural area, but there is nature. There is nature all around us. So wherever we are, we can go out and find nature speaking. So I want to invite you to seek something that is speaking to you. It might be a plant, or an animal, or a cloud. It might be a blade of grass, or a tiny stone in the pavement. It might be a dazzling moment, or it might be an extended contemplation, kind of like I did with our meditation, of all the varying shades and textures and movements of that single blade of grass. I invite you simply to be receptive, to be open to experiencing the gasp of recognition, of the Logos, the conversation, the divine presence dancing with you and calling you by name. You might not end up feeling this gasp of recognition. You can't force it. I also realize this is a little awkward and it's still a little impractical. And of course, you don't have to do this if it doesn't resonate. I have no idea what will happen. I am inviting you to join me as I step out in trust in the Spirit, and we will reconvene in 5-ish minutes. I'll be keeping track of time. You all can set your timers if you're on Zoom. So let's go. What good news. What good news. The earth can preach much, much better than I. We are living through a time of great disruption. We cannot take anything for granted. We cannot hold on to the way things used to be, and it is terrifying. But amidst this great disruption, this death of what was, something is growing. Did you see it out there in that tiny strip in the middle of the industrial complex? How much life? There is a gardener sitting and quietly waiting for us to notice that the soil is fertile, that seeds are sprouting again, and the whole web of life is speaking to us of how to live in a new way. Even as society crumbles, the earth rejoices. It may take a long time and a lot of bewilderment to embrace it. It may be messy and contradictory, but the trees of the field are clapping their hands. The birds of the air are calling out to us to join the indwelling dance of connection. The seedlings that the gardener is tending in the dark are growing beautiful, nourishing, healing fruits of connection. and fruits of resurrection. The happy ending begins as soon as we join the conversation.